And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to pull up my slides here. Welcome to State of Angular Ecosystem. Whoopsies. Can you see that there's some feedback here? Okay, I'm going to press mute on my YouTube. Thanks all for watching from YouTube. All right, so yeah, very excited again to have this event today and just to have so many guests here chatting with us and everything. Wanted to thank Angular team for always being so supportive and co-hosting this with us and sponsoring this event. Emma, do you want to say some nice words?
Yeah, absolutely. We're always happy to join these events and be here. Thanks for what you're doing for the community.
Yeah, well, thank you so much too. And this.labs. So this.labs is the sister company of this.media. And we are hiring. So if you love Angular and love working with awesome people and you want to work for a 100% remote company worldwide, definitely come check us out because I feel like we never stop hiring. So it's been fun and our team is just so amazing. We also have a lot of really amazing events on the this.media side. We have State of Automation coming up. Every month we host a monthly mentoring for a woman in tech. So the next one's going to be really cool. It's going to be a voice coach that's going to be coming and just teaching us how to be more confident with our voices. So really fun event. Definitely join. State of React Ecosystem is going to be awesome with React folks. And then we host a free JavaScript marathon, basically a week full of events, free trainings. So definitely check that out when you can. And then, of course, monthly mentoring happening again in July. So hopefully y'all can join us for some of that. My name is Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLeet. I'm the CEO of this.labs. Also a Google developer expert for Angular and on the RxJS core team, joined by the lovely Emma, who is on the Angular team at Google. And then Balazs, who is a software engineer at this.dot, is also joining us to co-host. So he'll be the nice person you see on YouTube comments and be asking questions. So the way this is going to work is we're going to have all these amazing panelists give us quick 5-minute updates about what they're doing in their projects in the community. And then we'll go to a Q&A section. So again, feel free to put all of your comments and all your YouTube. I see you folks saying hi on YouTube, and we'll get to all the questions. So giving you an idea of our panelists today, we have Aaron, who is going to be talking about Scully and ngconf. We have Sandy from Narwhal going to be speaking, Mike from NGRX speaking as well, Ben from RxJS, Jia, who is on the Angular team and giving us an update on zones, and then Nacho, who is going to be talking about Lumberjack. So without further ado, I wanted to give it to Emma to talk about updates in Angular.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sharing my screen. You can switch over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess to talk about Angular and the ecosystem and the state of Angular, we always talk about how Google supports Angular. Obviously, Angular is a team at Google, but we want to sort of flip the script and just talk about how Angular supports Google. So if we actually look at what Google is using Angular for, it's pretty much everything. So if you're a developer at Google, you pretty much need Angular to do your daily job. So all the way through the entire workflow from filing a bug, there's a tool called Buganizer that is completely built on Angular, and that's how all bugs and tickets are kept. And then if you go and you look up code, there's a tool called Code Search, which is, again, completely Angular. It's also open source if you want to look that up. And then if you go and let's say you look up code and you have a bug that you want to fix and you want to go edit that code, you do that completely in the browser in, again, an Angular application. And then once that code is truly perfected and you want to submit a CL or a PR, if you're talking Git terminology, you would open a CL in a critique tool that is also Angular. So the entire software development lifecycle at Google completely relies and is built off of Angular. And Google is highly invested in, again, that Angular journey. And there's thousands of other apps, right? So many of them are small. Some of them are mission critical. A lot of them are sort of like cafeteria apps and things like that. But there's also major exterior products that are, again, built with Angular. So public facing things like the Google Cloud Console, which is probably the largest Angular application out there. It's about 2 million lines of code and is all of Google Cloud. Things like Firebase, Google Domains, if you have a domain with Google, Google Analytics, and a ton of other things, right? So there's thousands of developers within Google that are using Angular and a part of the Angular ecosystem. And the way we know that is that we have those thousands of people authoring code. So we run searches on all of the code submitted in CLs to check for Angular code. We're tracking that. And then we're also tracking that we have about 1,000 new engineers coming in every year to learn Angular with our internal coursework that we're supporting to make sure that developers have the tools they need to be successful. So I guess the question is, Google is super invested in Angular. We're building it at Google. We're clearly highly invested in using it. So why participate in open source? Like, why be here today to talk about the Angular ecosystem? And there's a bunch of good reasons. I think everyone is familiar with open source, but hiring, right? Google wants to be able to hire quality engineers. If the language that we're using and the framework is exterior, then people already have the tools and building blocks to be able to come in, onboard very quickly and get to using things. Angular also is very opinionated and has some of those like best practices built in. So you're familiar with what that code looks like. There's a familiar structure. And the same goes the reverse direction, right? Like, we want to make sure that if you're developing in Angular at Google and you want to go get an awesome job at this.labs or something else, that you're familiar and that your tools and skills are transferable. The next thing is the ecosystem, right? So having millions of people that are not working on Google use cases, working on the same language is obviously super important to making sure that it's scalable, that things are being fixed quickly, right? It's a million eyes looking at code versus just a small subsect of the internet. And it also means that we get a lot of really great feedback. So we open RFCs pretty regularly to get requests for comments from within the community. We're also seeing, I think you can look at the GitHub repos, but there's like 2,000 issues open of all kinds of different feature requests for situations we maybe didn't think about, but that would benefit the framework down the line. All kinds of bug reports of like niche things or really big things. And people are also opening PRs and fixing these things themselves. So we're getting the support from the ecosystem and the feedback we get there. And then also quality, right? So if we have people giving really great feedback from all over the world and all of these different use cases that maybe we're not thinking about, and we have an ecosystem that's supporting that, then the code is better quality, right? At the end of the day, that means that millions of people are looking at these lines of code that we're publishing and deploying. And so it's just higher quality as a result. And so obviously today we're talking about Angular and the state of the Angular ecosystem. So we want to dive really quickly just into a little bit more of what that ecosystem looks like. So just to sort of give some numbers, the adoption in open source, especially over the last 6 months, has seen pretty spectacular growth. So our NPM downloads for Angular have almost doubled, I guess not quite, but they've moved from 1.4 million weekly to 2.5 million weekly. And again, this is just NPM downloads, which is not the best metric, right? Angular is very much an enterprise application. So there's a lot of projects that are using Angular that are not on an NPM registry and have some sort of private registry. Similarly, there's currently about 1.8 million GitHub projects that are using Angular. And again, that's just public GitHub projects. That's not private projects or things that are hosted off of GitHub. Like, again, a lot of those enterprise solutions or things from other parts of the world. So all of this to say that we are very excited to be here and talk about the Angular ecosystem and how the open source community is using Angular today. So hand it back to Tracy.
Thank you so much. That's amazing to see the growth of Angular, and I know all of us just love to see that, and love watching more people join the Angular community and participate in it. So first up, we're going to go ahead and have Ben Lesh give a little talk, an update about RxJS. So welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Tracy. So Tracy's told me I have to fit all this into 5 minutes.
5 minutes. I'm timing you.
I butchered some slides. A lot of stuff has happened, so it's going to be hard to cram all this in 5 minutes, but I'm going to do my best. So let me share my screen. Oh no, I don't know if sharing my screen might be a little bit crazy because my screen is enormous.
You can also just share a Chrome tab or a tab.
I'm going to just do a Chrome tab. Share. All right. So I don't know if this is going to present all right. I'm going to try it, hopefully. And I started from the wrong spot, which is awful. Go back.
Looks great.
Yep, there, done. Talk's over. All right. So I butchered this actually from some other talks I did, but basically, the big thing that some of you may have missed is RxJS 7 has been released, and that's going to, like right now, it's not shipping with Angular, but Angular is definitely heading that direction, and they should, because the biggest thing to note about RxJS 7 is that it's 53% of the original size of RxJS 6. That's including new features. So that's the biggest thing about it. And just to give you a visual representation of what that looks like, here we are. So upgrading, when you can upgrade, is going to be something that's going to affect your shipped bundle size in a positive way. And it's also a little faster in a few cases. So, and a lot of the savings were around like operator usage. So you don't really have to worry as much about using different operators. But here's just an example. If you use every operator, it's 19 kilobytes. Before it was 40 or 52. If you use a few of these common operators, before it was only 10 kilobytes, but now it's only 4. So it's pretty drastic difference. The main goal of version 7 though was to get better TypeScript typings, because our TypeScript typings were really bad through 5 and 6. And a lot of that was because when we first wrote RxJS 5, it was written against TypeScript 1.8, and it just wasn't capable of doing a lot of things. So one of the things that is just a remnant of dealing with TypeScript 1.8 is before you could have a subject of type number and then pass nothing to next, which doesn't make any sense. Like you shouldn't be able to do that. That's not type safe, right? So now in RxJS 7, it's type safe again. So if you want to be able to call next with no argument, you need to make sure that you've got a subject of void or like number or void or whatever, and then it will allow you to do that. So that'll be something when you update. I know that a lot of folks using Angular will have subjects where they're just calling next with no argument in an on-click event, and they're going to be a little bit confused by this. So this is an important thing. You need a subject of void if you want to call next with no argument. Another thing is there's a lot of, I think probably legacy, hopefully now, Angular code that uses toPromise, because there used to be documentation in the Angular docs that said to use toPromise, which I do not recommend. And it was typed incorrectly. So what it boils down to is if you have an observable that doesn't next a value and it completes, there was a decision a long time ago that toPromise should resolve with undefined, but that's not right. That just like, the reality of it is you're taking something that never gave you a value and being like, okay, well, I'm going to pretend you gave me undefined, and that wasn't correct. So, and then the typings weren't right on it. So really toPromise is always going to return a promise of T or undefined, because you can't really tell at build time whether or not observable is going to give you a value, at least not yet. So you're going to kind of run into a few issues with this, maybe, where it's going to complain to you about this value could be undefined. It's fine. You can, if you know that it's not undefined, you can put an exclamation point there or whatever. That's one way to fix it. Or you could use the new APIs that are provided, which are last value from and first value from, which are standalone. You call them just like you see here, and they will give you they'll give you a promise that will reject if you don't get something. And in most cases, say with HTTP or something, that's not going to happen. But It's just a better API, and it's more tree shakeable. You can also configure it to give you a default value if it resolves or with nothing. And so instead of erroring, you can get, some other value instead. There's been some updates to API consistency that might affect you. For one, Finalize behaved very strangely in older versions of ArcGIS. And for example, ArcGIS 6, you can see here that Finalize happens in roughly the right spot at the end, but in the middle there, it's kind of like you're starting the next observable in this concat before you finalize the previous one, and that doesn't make any sense. So that's been resolved in ArcGIS 7. So you're going to see this again. Here's another thing where there's finalize and then another finalize afterwards. In ArcGIS 6, they happen in reverse order, and now we've got it to where they'll happen in a more deterministic order. So there's things like that are going to change as you update. They're breaking changes, which is why we had to wait, but they're breaking changes, I think, for the better in ways that I think people will be able to make more sense of. And then we also tried to make our API more consistent. We had these operators on the left-hand side that took notifiers. So for example, take until takes a notifier that when the observable emits, it completes your observable. A lot of people are familiar with that one in the Angular world. But like take until would only operate if your notifier actually emitted a value, but not if it completed without emitting a value. And there are some inconsistencies between the left-hand side and the right-hand side there, where the ones on the left in version 6 used to be like, oh, you completed without a value, that's a notification, we're gonna count that. That was an incorrect behavior. So to make everything consistent, now all notifiers actually have to notify with a nexted value in order to be considered a notification. So complete on its own won't do things. So it's all consistent now. You don't have to memorize it between different operators, but that might bite you as you update. So it's something to know about. Subscription add. A lot of people, I used to see this, would do like, oh, I'm going to call subscription add this and then add this and then that, because they try to use it as like some sort of fluent API to just chain add together over and over again because they saw it returned a subscription, and it never did what you thought it did. So it was actually for situations where you could add a handler, like a function, to the subscription, and when you wanted to remove it, you had to pass that subscription to it. That's been changed in version 7 to where now add returns void. So if you try to chain it, you're going to get this thing. So you can't make this dumb move anymore. You actually have to add it appropriately. And the other addition is you can add and remove handlers directly, much like you can with like a add event listener, remove event listener sort of thing. So it's an important thing to notice. We're also trying to move towards making multicasting less confusing. So right now we have all of these many, and actually publish behavior is missing on this. So we have a whole bunch of different multicasting operators, and people get really confused about what they do. In particular, share replay kills people. They don't quite understand like why the underlying thing is still running. I could go into a whole talk about the history behind that and how the community was 50-50 split on the behavior that it should have. But the thing is, there's magic under the hood. Now, share, the same operator that you're used to, is configurable such that you can make it behave like share replay or share behavior if you want it, or share through whatever subject that I wrote by hand. And you can tell it when you want it to reset. And actually in version 7.1, which is already out, you can even pass a function to these reset properties that will allow you to delay the reset with an observable. So it's this is like kind of one thing to rule them all as far as sharing goes, and you can read it and see specifically what it's going to do. It's not magic under the hood, so it should be less confusing.
Oh my gosh, Ben, you're running out of time.
I don't want to run.
Do you have a talk? Like, do you have like a gigantic, like 45-minute talk?
There
like
is.
Okay, where is it?
It's the ArcGIS Live. I'll tweet it later. How's that?
Okay, or send me the link and I can post it in the chat so everybody can like.
I'm just gonna speed through to the very end then. All right.
Yeah.
So there's all of these things about multicast. We want to try to get it down towards just these three: share, connectable, and connect instead of all of this. So that's a big thing. We take async intervals now and readable streams into any of the functions that normally accept a promise or an observable. Animation frames is new. You might want to check that out. This is probably Tracy's favorite part. I have to show you this because this is me playing with animation frames.
Sparkles!
It's got sparkles.
That
Yes.
is my favorite. Thank you.
And then a host of new features. One thing I want to call out before I stop, though, subject observed landed in 7.1. And what this is it's a Boolean. You can check to see if your subject is observed. Right now, people are looking at subject.observers.length, and we want to hide that in the future because that was an internal API. It was kind of a leaked API. So if you want to know if your subject's observed, there's a Boolean for that now. There's really no reason you should check that, but enough people were checking that we just provided an API for it. So that's it. Things are going to get smaller and better as time goes on, and ArcGIS 7.1 is out right now. So
Thank you so much. And again, post that link in the private chat so I can post it in the regular chat so everyone has a link to it. And thank you again. We're so excited about the updates on ArcGIS and all your hard work and the core team's hard work. Cool. So next up, we're going to go ahead and have Jiao present. So for those of you who don't know Jiao is on the Angular team. He's also an engineer here at this slot, which we love working with you, Jiao. And he is, I feel like you're like the main maintainer of zones. Is that right?
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we're super excited about your updates.
Okay, I will share my screen here. Okay. Okay, thank you, Tracy. And I will give a quick update on the recent update of Zone.js. So Zone.js and ng-zone have some performance enhancement. So in the Angular version 10, there is a new option when you bootstrap the module, which is ng-zone event classing. So in this case, we have a div, and inside the div, we have a button inside. And because of the event bubbling, so if you have the two click listener for the div and the button, so if you click the button, and the two event listener will both be invoked, and the change detection will be run twice. So in some cases, especially in some UI component library, so this is not good for the performance. So in Angular 10, there is a new option by bootstrap module, ng-zone event classing. If it's set to true, in this case, even the change detection will only run once. And in the new version, in Angular 12, there is another option called ng-zone run classing. So not only for the event listener, there is some case in this sample, there is a for loop, and inside there are a lot of there is ng-zone.run. So in this case, if without this option, the change detection will run multiple times. But with this option, in this case, the change detection will also only run once. So the behind the scene, we schedule a request animation frame to run the change detection, and we have a flag inside ng-zone to check currently the change detection is scheduled or not. So the change detection become from synchronized to asynchronized. So that is if you are using this flag, this is kind of behavior change. So, but it will not impact your application in the most of case. So if you want to improve your performance, you can try those two flags. And also, finally, we have official documentation about zone. You can find it in the angular.io. It is a basic guide to describe what zone is, what is the how Zone.js work. So if you want to have a better understanding of the Zone.js, you can read it first. And also, Zone provide configuration API TypeScript definition. So here, Zone.js monkey patch a lot of APIs, asynchronous APIs, and a lot of developers ask whether I can disable some of them, but they don't know what is the correct flag, the spelling of the flag. So there is a TypeScript type definition here. So for example, if you want to disable queue macro task, or you want to disable request animation frame, you don't want use Zone.js monkey patched version, you can set this flag to true, so you can use the native one. So now you can use this TypeScript definition, and you don't need to check the source code to get the correct flag. And also in the new version of Zone.js 0.11, there are some new APIs also being monkey patched and in the zone. So we now support promise finally all settled, and we also support symbol.spaces. So with this support, if you are using some third-party promise implementation, such as Core.js ES6 promise, there will be no more the promise has been overwritten error. And we also support message port on message and queue macro task APIs. And about passive event listener, so now in the Angular template, for example, the scroll event or the touch star event, if you want to make this event listener passive, it is not that easy to do that because the template doesn't support that feature. So maybe you have to do something like get the reference of div and use the native DOM API add event listener, or you can write your own event manager plugin, something like that, to add the passive option here. And I think Angular will have a feature to define the passive option in the template in the future. But for now, Zone.js provide a solution. So you can define a global variable like this. So in this case, the touch start and the scope event will always be passive. And you define this before import Zone.js, so you can implement the feature like this. And the Zone.js now can support jest. So before Zone.js 0.11, you can use the Jest Angular preset to support Angular test. And in that library, there is some Zone.js monkey patch jest logic. So from 0.11, and that part of logic has been moved to the Zone.js repo, moved to the Angular repo. And so we can add the feature of fix bugs more easily. And we also support the Jest fix timers and some Jest special APIs. So about fix timers, if you are using Jest, use fix timers. It is very similar with fixing. So now you can use the fix timers seamlessly with the tick, the fixing API. And also there is a breaking change from 0.10 to 0.11. The Zone.js bundle has been upgraded to the Angular package format. This is a breaking change. If you're using Angular CLI, it will not impact you. But if you are not, so before the new version, the package will look like this. In the dist folder, there is a zone.js, which is a ES5 module, and include the legacy browser support. And there is also a zone evergreen.js, which is a ESM module, and without the legacy browser support. So if you load the zone.js/dist/zone.js, which is generated by the Angular CLI, everything will work, and with the legacy browser support. But if you are not using Angular CLI and write code like this, import Zone.js, it will load the ES5 module in version 10. And in the new version, the bundle format, the folder, everything is updated. We still keep the dist folder for the backward compatibility, but we support Angular package format. We have a bundles folder, which is a ES5 UMD module, and I have a ESM 2015 folder with the ES 2015 module. And so now if you're writing code like import Zone.js directly, it will not load the ES5 module any longer. It will load the new FESM 2015 bundle without legacy browser support. So this is a big change if you're not using the Angular CLI. And finally, this is a main issue about Zone.js because Zone.js can't really intercept the native async await. So Angular can't build the bundle in ES 2017 plus. And in Angular 12, CLI 12, there is a partial solution to only transpile the async await to JS promise and keep the other new syntax in the ES 2017 syntax. So this is, I think it is a big improvement. So that's all from me.
Awesome, thank you. Wow, so many updates. Just like Aaron said in chat, Zone's just got a lot more forgiving on performance, which is really cool. But yeah, that's just amazing to see all the hard work and effort that you've been putting in, and everybody on this call. So next up, we're going to go ahead and have Mike from NGRX give an update.
Perfect. Thanks, Tracy.
Yeah.
So for those who are unfamiliar with NGRX, it's a collection of reactive libraries for Angular applications meant to help supercharge your Angular app with RxJS. And it's completely community run. It was created by Angular core team member Rob Wormald. And today it's maintained by people from all across the Angular community, including potentially you. So I'm pretty excited to cover a few new features and new releases that have come out over the past year. But just real quick, for those of you who have not gotten a chance to meet me before, my name is Mike Ryan. And you can follow me on Twitter and GitHub and Medium at Mike Ryan Dev. And I'm one of the co-creators of the libraries in NGRX. So I just want to give a quick shout out to our core team plus our community for all the hard work they've put in to all the new features I'm going to show you today. So we have a really awesome core team. Again, like I said, it spans a variety of parts of the Angular community, and we're really excited about them. But we're even more excited by the over 120 contributors that have made NGRX possible over the past year. So really thank you for all of the work that y'all have done, creating pull requests, helping us with issues, improving our documentation, and supporting other developers to help make NGRX successful. If this seems like a project you want to get involved in, come join us. You can find all of our libraries at github.com/NGRX. And you can also get involved in our community at discord.dg/NGRX if you want to help other developers out. So first, a quick update on NGRX state. This includes our store, effects, router store, and entity libraries. It seems like, based on the download stats, about 1 in 6 Angular apps are now using NGRX state for their application state management. And over the past year, we've been really just working on bug fixes and improving the ergonomics of using our libraries. So some of this looks like improved testing. So you used to have to test a lot of your NGRX applications using the test bed, and now we have a number of utilities and helpers that help you test your reducers and your effects outside of that test bed. We've also had some new operators, I'll cover one of them in a minute, that help you avoid some performance foot guns that you might encounter when trying to combine NGRX effects and NGRX store. But I think the biggest release over the past year in the NGRX land is a brand new library called NGRX Component Store. So some of you may be familiar with NGRX Store. It's a library for managing the state of your Angular applications, and it's a global state container for your entire Angular app, providing a single source of truth for your components and services to share. And it lets you reactively read state out of state containers via selectors and update state immutably by dispatching actions. Component Store works similarly, but it's designed for individual components or smaller trees and components. Where NGRX Store is meant for application state, your component store can be used to keep information inside of it that you do not need to share across your entire application. However, components still pull state out of component store reactively by using selectors and update state immutably by calling updates. It kind of helps me to think of component store as being a supercharged service with a subject. I think, Frost, you're the one who gave me that idea many years ago on a phone call. So if you're familiar with this pattern, I think this library is going to be really familiar to you. It's simple, no-frills state management for components. And since it's designed for components, its lifecycle is attached to components. When your component is created, a new instance of your component store is created for it. And when your component is destroyed, your instance is automatically cleaned up for you. So let's take a quick look at some sample code to see how you can get started creating your own component store. To create a component store, first you define a new Angular service that extends the component store class, and then you use the class's constructor to initialize the state of your component store. From there, you can define special functions that work as updaters to your state that your components can call, and these receive arguments and immutably update the state contained inside of the store. You can also provide selector functions to components that let components efficiently read state in the store. To use your new component store, simply drop it into the providers array of your component and then inject it into the constructor. Now it's attached to the lifecycle of your component. And that's all you need to know to get started using NGRX Component Store. And I really want to highlight that you can use NGRX Component Store without any other NGRX libraries. In fact, you can integrate Component Store into any Angular application, even if it's using a completely different state management solution for the application state like NGXS or Akita. So if you want to learn more and get started, visit ngrx.io/guide/component store. And there you're going to find a variety of resources to get you started with NGRX Component Store, including architecture diagrams, breaking down Component Store, more information on when you might want to use NGRX Store versus NGRX Component Store, and detailed API information. We also just released NGRX version 12. So we're excited because we're able to release this on time with Angular 12. It released practically within the same day. And so we're really excited about that. A few highlights that are along here include a brand new operator that ships with effects called concat latest from. This helps developers avoid a small performance hook gun, where if you're writing an effect, you might have wanted to read state out of the store using the with latest from operator. This has the side effect of keeping that selector always hot, even if the effect's not currently listening for actions. Concat latest from only subscribes to the selector when we're handling a new action, and so it keeps that selector cold for when it's not being used. The other thing to highlight is that when you ng-add at NGRX store, we're now installing a set of ESLint linters developed by one of our core team members, Tim DeShriver. And this helps you use NGRX store with all of its best practices. So this has helped ensure that you're writing really great reducers, that you're adhering to good action hygiene, and that your effects aren't doing anything that's going to cause you trouble down the line. So that's all I wanted to share today. If you want more information, feel free to reach out to the NGRX team. We're all over Twitter. And I just want to give a quick thank you to our team, our community, and all of our sponsors that have helped shape NGRX over the past year. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Mike. That is so amazing. And wow, it's so cool to see all the contributors. I definitely tweeted about that. That picture was really, really impactful. For those of you all, again, who are listening, feel free to put questions in the chat and we'll be getting to them soon. So thank you again for that update. Next up, I'm so excited. Sandy is going to be giving us an update on add-nx.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to give an update today on NX Dev Tools. We've been up to a lot. With the recent release of NX 12.3, we've added support for Angular 12. And the Angular upgrade process has definitely improved over time. So nice work on that, everyone. But we know Angular upgrades haven't always been smooth. So we have seen and are looking at some issues, things like Angular and Storybooks Webpack 5 version compatibility, things that weird to happen like that. But I really don't think you should hesitate too much on this upgrade. Honestly, this is also one benefit with NX when you're using these other solutions with Angular, like Storybook and all the other things that the community has really moved towards, such as Cypress and Jest. NX handles all those migrations and upgrades for you as well, which really encourages keeping your projects up to date. With the Angular CLI dropping support for TSLint, there's always Angular ESLint and the convert TSLint to ESLint generator that James Henry contributed. I, wouldn't really say that the Angular CLI dropping the support for configuring this outdated linter and the end-to-end tests is like such a big loss for most of us Angular developers. Instead, it's like we're embracing these kinds of major contributions as a community, and that just feels amazing. I can tell you what, I got paired up with James when I first joined Narwhal, and not only is he just an all-around great dude, he's very dedicated to his work on Angular ESLint for sure. Putting our trust in community contributions is a very good and healthy thing for the ecosystem overall. Specifically in NX, we've made some improvements to our incremental builds. Incremental builds are, for example, where you have a project that depends on buildable libraries within your workspace. And so those libraries need to be built before anything that depends on them can be built. And then with the NX cache, if they're already been built and there are no affected changes, those libraries don't need to be rebuilt. So previously with incremental builds, you had to run your build using the with deps option in order to build your dependencies as well. So if you didn't use with deps and your dependencies weren't built, your build would fail. But target dependencies were added to let you declare other targets that a target depends on that will then be run automatically with the parent project as needed. Target dependencies are configured in the workspace config on the target with depends on. They can be targets in dependent projects in the workspace or even other targets in the same project. Another feature we've been working on and will be releasing very soon to the public is a distributed task execution for NX Cloud. This is so rad, y'all. In large workspaces, you can save a lot of time by running only what is affected in your CI. It's even better when you can run those tasks in parallel. And you could split those tasks into buckets and distribute them across multiple machines and gather up all those results. But the distributed task execution coming out in NX Cloud will do this distribution for you automatically with a single configuration setting and give you a consolidated view of all those task runs. Earlier this year, we introduced some new ways of getting started with NX in existing projects. One of those is add-nx-to-monorepo. It makes some guesses about your workspace and introduces a few changes to get it migrated onto NX. It adds and installs the NX dependencies, and then it looks at your repo and guesses what the projects are. It adds the NX and workspace configuration files where it lists those projects, and then a tsconfig for mapping all your project paths. And then included with NX, you get the computation caching. You can also opt into NX Cloud for distributed caching. And your NX affected commands will analyze your workspace and determine what projects are affected by your commit. And you get the workspace visualization with NX Step Graph. NX also works with other frameworks aside from Angular, even in the same repos, So there's npx CRA to NX if you have a Create React app that you want to migrate to NX. And then we've got NX Devkit for building generators and NX plugins. We feel like it's got a simpler API than, say, the Angular Devkit. It doesn't use observables, and there's no complex partial application, and it's well documented. Docs for NX Devkit have recently been updated and refreshed with more deep dives. The next one is my project. So obviously I feel like I saved this best stuff for last year. NX Console is our VS Code extension for NX and Angular projects. When I first took it on, I ended up working through a few bugs, but now we've got that project back up to date in a more stable place. So we're actually looking at some enhancements, which is so much more exciting. We've done some performance improvements that really helped with some of the larger client workspaces that we work on at Narwhal. And I've added support for running a given project's targets from the Explorer context menu and the command palette. And then on top of that run command support, we've added a code lens to the workspace or Angular config file that lets you click to run those targets from within the file. Have y'all seen that yet? It's pretty new. We just released it last week. My NX console partner, John, and I got to tag team on that feature and work together on it, which is so much fun. I've been fairly new to Narwhal, just joined in the fall, and I'm really finding that my colleagues are all super generous people. I love it. Another thing that John's working on for the workspace or Angular JSON config is adding support for JSON schema validation. So be on the lookout for that to be released soon as well. We're also migrating the project to use NX Devkit rather than what it's doing now, which for legacy reasons is duplicating a lot of functionality that NX already provides. So this is going to make for a nice cohesive refactor on the project overall, which is really the kind of improvement that always feels good when you get there. Lastly, I'm going to throw out an ask. I really enjoy talking to users and getting a real feel for how they use our products. So if anyone wants to do some user testing on NX Console with me or has any feedback to share, please reach out. Let's chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sandy. That was awesome. Loved your presentation too. And it's so cool to see you all working on just like so many awesome tools for the community. So next up, we're going to have Aaron present. And Aaron is going to talk about Scully and some other fun things. Oops, there we go.
Thanks. Okay. So I'm Aaron Frost. I'm with the Scully core team and also with ngconf. So I'll be giving a couple updates on both of those. A quick update on Scully. We currently, when you pre-render your application with Scully, there's a lot of, if you're pre-rendering thousands of pages, each of those pages may request dozens of assets from the server, which means during a pre-render cycle, your servers can get overwhelmed, whether that's your testing or your staging or your production if you're pre-rendering for your production site. So we added asset caching so that anytime any of your routes request the same exact piece of information, the asset gets cached, whether that's CSS, an image, an API request, or anything else, the asset gets cached and the build speeds up, but it also protects your server from feeling like it's getting DDoS, which is a really huge value. And this exists on your machine only. So if you have people on your team, when they start the build, they're also going to have to build their own asset cache, which is why we added the cache vault. The cache vault is a piece of server-side code that is hosted on our servers, where your pre-rendered cache, your assets for your pre-render, gets shared across your entire team with one line of configuration. Your entire team can share all of their asset caches, which means everyone's build should get quicker anytime anyone runs a build. In addition, we recently added pre-rendering with Node. Historically, Scully has been so easy to work with because it pre-renders with Puppeteer, which meant it's extremely forgiving. You don't get any weird errors about the browser existing, about any missing browser APIs because it is a browser. But that's also the same thing that makes that valuable. It also makes that a liability because it does launch a Chrome instance for every page that it renders, which means it's going to go slower. So we added Node pre-rendering, which pre-renders the Angular application in a Node environment using Domino and a couple other tools from the Angular team, which is significantly faster. It's hundreds of times faster than it used to be. You can render thousands of pages in a second, whereas before with Puppeteer, 1,000 pages may take 20 or 30 seconds. And so it's much, much faster than it used to be. In addition to server-side rendering, we're working right now on in addition to Node pre-rendering, we're working on server-side SSR, so building a server to do just-in-time rendering of your Angular apps. So a lot of people will use Angular Universal in production, and the Scully SSR server is intended to be a bit more supported, a bit more featureful version of that server that has a 1-800 number to call, as well as professional plugins and tiebacks into the pre-rendering cycle so that you can have even more fine-grained control over the pre-rendering of your app without having to be an absolute platform expert in order to get that fine-grained control. And then the next feature that we're working on, just kind of the future, is we're building a rebuild server. What this means is if your app has content in a CMS, something like Contentful, FlameLink, or Adobe Experience Manager, wherever your content exists, you can, we'll have plugins that will allow you to update the content in the experience or in the CMS and have that automatically fire off rebuilds of your app, but only for the affected pages. So a rebuild, anytime you update content, instead of re-rendering the entire site, you can re-render just the pages that were affected. Again, whether that CMS is an actual CMS or it's a GitHub repo where you just push markdown files, that rebuilding will be a lot quicker. So that is the current road path and the future road path of what's happening in Scully, and we're excited on what we're doing there. If you have any questions, please reach out to the Scully team. You can find us on the Angular Discord. So if anyone's not in the Angular Discord, this is a good plug for getting on the Angular Discord. Just go to discord.gg/Angular, and you can join. I think there's over 10,000 of us now on that Angular Discord. And there's a channel in there specifically for Scully, as well as a lot of the other topics that we're talking about here. Or you can reach out to me on Twitter at Aaron Frost, or Aaron@hero.dev is another way to get a hold of me. Now, I wanted to talk about NGConf 2021, or 2022, sorry. It is going to be in March of 2022. For a lot of us that are used to seeing each other every year or multiple times a year, like Mike Ryan, I've seen 3 or 4 times a year for years. Tracy, same thing. Ben, same thing. This pandemic's been tough for a lot of us. And so we're super excited, like crazy excited, to do a first all Angular community in-person event in March of next year. It's going to be awesome. We're not sure how international travel, how everything's going to be by then. So we're asking if you're wanting to come, if you're planning to come, because we don't know what the limitations are going to be, please do your best efforts to get vaccinated as soon as possible, so that there's no limitations or last minute cancellations due to a lack of vaccination. And then it is going to be the greatest event we've ever put on. It will be just the virtue of seeing people we haven't seen for years, or just having the entire Angular community back together. The virtue of that will be huge, but we're going to put on a show that everyone should remember. The CFP for NGConf 2022 is starting in the fall of this year. So anyone working on a cool talk idea, now's the time to kind of start whittling those down and formulating your final talk submissions. If you have any questions, please follow us on Twitter, because we will be doing office hours for the CFP to help anyone kind of help mold their talk ideas. We do this every year. We're not the greatest speakers in the world, but we have picked a lot of talks, so we try and help people get their talks a little bit more well formatted, or at least formulate their ideas. And so if you need any help with that, please follow us on Twitter at NGConf to stay tuned for the updates on the CFP. And then ticket sales for that event will also go live in the fall. So I don't know if anyone wants to do this live event more than me, but I'm sure there are a lot of you out there that are just excited to get back together as a dev community. And being trapped indoors with the family for a year has been great in its own way, but it's exciting to have some adult programmer time again. So anyway, that is my update for NGConf and Scully. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, who's freaking out about NGConf? Me. I think everyone else on this call. It's going to be so much fun. And Aaron, that is such a good reminder that CFPs are in the fall, which means I need to start preparing my 20 million CFP submissions today. And I'll just start sharing Google Docs with you. I'm just kidding. So last but not least, we have Nacho, and Nacho is going to be talking about Lumberjack. This is such a cool project. Welcome, Nacho.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, we are going to talk a bit about Lumberjack and also a bit about ngWorkers in general, because ngWorkers is a globally distributed organization for open source. So very much like this dot and the Sense energy I feel in there. So ngWorkers is, as I mentioned, it is group of content with Lars, Santosh, Serkan, and we are the ones that behind Lumberjack. And what is Lumberjack? Well, Lumberjack is a versatile login library designed for be extended and customized. So the main principle behind it is having a plugin architecture. So when we were start preparing Lumberjack, or thinking about creating Lumberjack, we were thinking about having all this community-driven effort where we just provide the system core, and the community can extend the rest. It is batteries included because we also add some kind of drivers with our plugins out of the box, which is the console and the HTTP drivers. But again, the main power is behind the developers using the technology. And there are a lot of cool stuff about Lumberjack, like robust error handling, custom schematics, which Santos is doing a great job there. And one of the side projects that came from Lumberjack was the Angular versions action, which is the way that we are using to have verified cross Angular compatibility checks. So we are in the CI now able to truly determine, using a single application and a single library, we are able to know how many Angular versions we are really compatible. And that was really fun to build. But also from the family of the Devkit, we have Spectacular, which is a integration testing library that is built thinking about making integration tests faster. And it has several features there. But basically, it's a test harness for Angular applications and libraries. It has an application testing, which will help testing the bootstrapping of the application, like that the hooks when the application runs are okay, everything's all right with that. The bootstrap listener and the application initializers. Another, and I think is my favorite feature about Spectacular, is the feature testing, which is a harness over a routed feature module. So it wraps the navigation functionality of a piece of your application and allows you to do integration testing. And you can do some tests like user interaction, but also check that the navigation in that part of the application is working as intended, without using some more heavy testing frameworks like more end-to-end or integration like Cypress or Protector. So that's really cool because it makes that a lot faster. Another feature.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah.
We had a request from YouTube.
I think I have a preference here, and I can font size a bit. Better now?
I think so.
Yeah, I just want to share this for everyone can take a look, but there is a lot of documentation out there about Spectacular and Lumberjack that I will be happy to provide in the links in the chat there. The feature testing, the pipe testing is also a way of integration testing your pipes without like unit testing the transform function, but going more like seeing what is really reflecting the HTML. So I think it's also a pretty nice feature. And Spectacular is greatly when it is combined with other libraries like Angular testing library, and you have all these user iteration that are provided there, or when combined with the Angular component harness. So this is a really, really quick introduction to Lumberjack and Spectacular, but we have some incoming works. For example, we have working a lot with expanding our documentation and creating more schematics to make everyone land in a more easier way, and in general, educational material. So we are working some short videos, and Lars is doing a great job doing some Angular after dark videos, like presenting all these technologies. And we have other related works with like the Angular versions action and the CDK table enhancements. And we also have some NX plugins that we are working on. So a lot of work, but yeah, this is a very roughly review of this work over what we are doing.
Thank you. That's awesome. Another set of really awesome contributors, it looks like, and really awesome projects that are happening within the Angular ecosystem. That's so cool. So now we're moving on to the kind of Q&A section. So there were a few questions in chat, and panelists, feel free to ask questions, or Emma, if you need to like grill anybody. I'm just kidding. Feel free to do that as well. So, Balash, do you have any questions to get started, or do you want me to ask one?
You can start, Tracy. I have some questions prepared.
Okay, well, I think this goes to Mike. Mike, somebody was asking about reactive forms.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think I saw that question too. NGRX forms when, I think was the question. So I think the Angular team's doing a great job with their forms libraries, and we are very happy to let the Angular team keep owning forms. That's my non-answer. That's my answer. There's no NGRX forms, not anytime soon.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Connected to the component store, we have some questions.
Sure.
The most recent question is that would it be a cleaner alternative to creating state management with a service?
Yeah, so the idea is that it's just a supercharged version of service with a subject. So I think if you were going to go down that route and wanted to use a behavior subject in a service, I think component store fits pretty much all the same use cases for that same pattern. And I'd highly recommend looking into it for those same applications.
And a while back, there was one question regarding the component store as well. Does this mean that no reducers?
So you can still use a reducer with it, but since we're trying to keep it simple, you can avoid using a reducer altogether with NGRX component store. So we're trying to make it as simple as possible for you to update the state contained inside of a component store. But again, that's just for component store. NGRX store is still built all on top of reducers.
Cool, thank you very much.
I have a question for Emma, because I know this is, we saw a lot of people saying like, I'm new to Angular, and welcome everyone to the Angular community. If you haven't been here for a while, everyone is so nice here. I love it. But Emma, how do people get involved with maybe making their first contribution to Angular?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome. I'm also new in almost the last year now. It's almost been a year. And so I was doing this just a year ago, but we just released some newly updated contribution docs. I can link them in the chat. I saw some really good comments of joining things like the Angular Discord and Angular Nation. So that's great places to find community. Looking at your local community meetups, there's pretty much one in every region in the world, and talking with organizers there and finding community there. And then if you want to contribute, I'll again link those contribution docs, but we're specifically really pushing people towards looking at things tagged with a new first issue in the GitHub repo, and especially looking at docs as a really great way to sort of just clone the repo, get up and running, and get started and start making contributions, because those docs get a lot of eyes. So that's a huge impact.
That's amazing. Thank you. And I have another question for Ben. I saw that in the chat. They're like, isn't Ben doing React these days? So yeah, Ben will definitely, he's being voluntold right now that he's going to be actually giving an update at State of React ecosystem as well. But Ben, does your React at work affect your life and love of Angular in the Angular community?
No. RxJS is still one of my biggest passions, obviously, and it's really big in Angular. I still very much love people on the Angular team where I worked right before my current position, and I love the community a lot. So I don't use Angular as much as anybody else in this call for sure, but I have definitely spent a very considerable amount of time, even after leaving Google, looking at Angular code inside of Google to help them sync RxJS with Google. And I still have a reasonable grasp of what's going on, and I very much care about what happens with Angular, and especially what happens with Angular coming from the RxJS side of things. So,
yeah, I would also say on the RxJS core team meetings, we actually have people from Google who are updating, RxJS within Google, and a lot of that has to do with Angular. So there's a lot of work every week being done on RxJS and Angular continuously collaborating.
Yep, that's right.
So while we are at the topic of RxJS and Angular, one of the most asked questions was about the type upgrade, which is a really big thing in my opinion. And the question is that will there be a migration script for later?
To update RxJS, not from the RxJS team. If Google or Angular can foot the bill to do that, that would be great. But like the RxJS is 100% volunteer work. Like there's no paid employees. If I had the time, absolutely, I would love to do that for people. But the bottom line is it's not something that the RxJS core team has the time or bandwidth to prioritize. So
well, this is a great opportunity for somebody in the community. Like if you're interested in making like a pretty impactful, contribution.
Right. Right. So
yeah.
the last time we went from 5 to 6, there were update scripts that Minko actually wrote and published, and that was done at the behest of Google. So I don't know if they're planning on doing anything like that. It's been discussed, and hopefully that's the case. What I've seen so far is that with like a single app or with small code bases, the update isn't too bad. Like there's deprecations, but we haven't really removed any runtime APIs. The biggest thing is, usually there's the usual thing that people find is there's better typings. And so they're actually going to find bugs in their code where types weren't catching it before. So my experience with individual apps has been, it's not too bad. With larger code bases like Google's monorepo, it's quite an undertaking, but most people don't have to deal with that. So
Thanks for that info. So I have a question for Aaron and Scully. Such a cool project. How do we bring more awareness to Scully? Or, I feel like it's such an amazing thing that you all contributed with collaboration with the Angular team. What can the community do to help support that? And what do you all need as a project?
It's tough. It kind of got 1.0 right when the pandemic started. So our team was lining up conference talk after conference talk after conference talk to go, spread the good news, and everything got canceled, and we've done some online stuff, but it's not the same. So the help we need help with docs. We need help with knowing who's using it. So if you're using it and you're like, hey, we use it and it's got this problem, or we love it and it's got this problem, whatever you want to say, reach out to us and let us know. So we need the feedback. But I think docs is probably the number one thing. People talking about it, but for that, I'm not sure that we'll get enough momentum until in-person events are back in place, right? Because there were so many rad events that just didn't happen. Like NG Vikings is so rad, and those things kind of trail off in this pandemic. And so I think we need a bit of normalcy back, but contribution to docs. The one thing I will say is there's nothing you can do as an Angular developer. The best people, the Ben Leshes of this planet, right? Even the narwhal, there's nothing that you can do to write as fast of an Angular app as if you pre-render your Angular app. And so pre-rendering really is the fastest way to give a service to your users. And so it's a really important piece of the performance puzzle that I think a lot of people need to check into, especially if you have like an e-com site. So I don't know, Tracy. I feel like you're better at PR than me. Maybe you tell me how to help get the word out.
I mean, that's pretty good, Folks contribute to the docs. If you have a conference or a meetup, definitely invite Aaron to come talk about Scully. We're actually doing an Angular World Tour soon in collaboration with Angular Core Team. So I'll definitely be inviting you on that. There will be a website up soon. Definitely check my Twitter @LadyLee when we announce it. It'll be this week. But bringing core team members and community members to come talk about Angular at your local meetups remotely.
Hold on. Well, one thing I want to know right now is Jeff Cross watching this? Because when Aaron was just talking, he said the Ben Leshes the world, and then said the narwhals, like right underneath that. And I feel like I just outranked narwhal somehow on my own. So I wonder, which is totally not true, by the way. But if I can rub it into Jeff Cross, that's probably worth something.
So due to that comment, Jeff Cross will shave his beard. That's just a given, right? Like, Sandy, you're the messenger here.
Got it. I'm on this.
Just have him take a nap and then slowly shave his beard off. Sandy, so I know Narwhal does so many projects, NX, and you guys are constantly just building amazing tools for the community. Do you guys accept community contributions as well?
Oh, absolutely. One thing you can build is plugins, and if your plugin is widely adopted, we'll help promote it. Yeah, absolutely. Like NX Devkit might be a great way to build those RxJS schematics to migrate forward. So yeah, absolutely. You can join our community Slack and get involved with us and see what's going on.
I also have a question regarding NX Console. It's a fantastic thing for VS Code, but some of my friends asked me that, what about IntelliJ users?
There are plugins for IntelliJ. We don't ourselves maintain them, but we do collaborate with those folks. So we try to keep features on par and chat about what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you very much.
Panelists, do you all have any questions for each other? Well, I have a question for Nacho. So Nacho, that was so cool, your presentation about Lumberjack and kind of some of the other things y'all have coming up. Is it just you three, or are there more? Can people join? What is that all about, and how do people get involved?
Great question. So initially there was 4 of us, and we had been the core maintainers of all these libraries, but it is totally open. So we are more than happy to have everyone and help them with wherever they need for jumping in the project, in the projects, because we have several ones. And actually we have some help from the outside. We have some, we appreciate any contribution. We appreciate ideas, issues, code, whatever. And for Lumberjack, since it's so built around the concept of plugins, we already have a couple of community plugins. One for sending logs for the Azure Insights, and one for the Firestore from Google Firestore. So these are some of the stuff that the community can do to help making Lumberjack a more larger ecosystem. But there is a lot. You can check our repositories, you can check our organizations, and you can reach us there, reach us via Twitter, whatever. We are more than happy to have everyone join the team.
Speaking of Lumberjack, I have a question right here. How do you start building custom drivers for Lumberjack?
Oh, that's a good one. So there are different ways of building these drivers or plugins for Lumberjack. And if you want to create one for your own project, let's say you have a custom server where you want to send your logs, we have some schematics in progress for making that easier. And that should be almost ready now. It's just in the final review phase. But if you want to build one for the community, we have a template GitHub repository with everything set up for you. CI, best practices. You will have almost a replica of the Lumberjack repo, but just focusing in building drivers. So you can check that in the Lumberjack documentation, so you can find there how to do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Matthew.
Thank you.
I have a question. Ben, RxJS has 24 million downloads a week, bruh. And Mike Ryan, you guys have 400,000. I mean, hundreds of thousands of downloads. This is an insane amount of downloads per week. So my question is, what is your favorite? That's a lot of stress. So what's your favorite thing about doing this open source? Because the more downloads you get, the more complaints you get as well. So what's your favorite thing about this? Because I'm sure there's plenty of like not favorite parts.
Oh, I don't know. Like I like helping people mostly, or just like providing tools that are useful to people, useful to myself, useful to my coworkers, useful to other people I meet. That's the really like for example, making RxJS smaller. Like sometimes I sit and ponder like, wow, you know, if I reduce the size of it to almost half of what it was, then like how many bytes per day worldwide am I saving like on the internet, like being shipped? So like there's interesting things to think about like that. And then otherwise, it's interesting to think about some of the strategy about how to get a library to where you need it to be while there's so many users without breaking a whole bunch of people and that sort of thing. I don't know, I guess I've learned to tune out the complaints as best as possible. Like actually most of the things that people complain about with RxJS are things I would also complain about if I saw the code that they were looking at, probably. You know, like big, huge operator chains or, you know, nonsense going on. Like, yeah, I get it. But it's just fun to help people mostly.
Yeah, for me, I get a lot of joy out of hearing developers share what they've built with NGRX. Like I love it when someone shows me something that they were able to ship because of NGRX. That's really fulfilling to me. I love using the Redux DevTools extension and seeing it turn green on when I'm just visiting a website, opening it up and saying, oh, this website's using NGRX actually. That's just a blast for me. And then very selfishly, I love getting to speak about it and making friends and, you know, the relationships that I've formed in the community because of it.
I'd love to ask Jia the same question because Jia's actually in Japan. And Jia, you just like work crazy hours to coordinate with the Angular team. I feel like you're always awake. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you going?
Yeah, so Zone.js is my first open source contribution. So from it, I learned a lot of the JavaScript fundamental things, the DOM, and Angular. So when I first contributed to Zone.js, I even don't know Zone.js is used by Angular. So Zone.js bring me to the Angular community, and I get a lot of the help, support from the community, from the Angular team. So I feel Zone.js and Angular is used by a lot of people. So I feel very proud, and so that is my motivation. So now Zone.js is also maybe in the future Zone.js will become optional, but still Zone.js now is a important part of Angular community. So I want to keep going to maintain and make it maybe smaller or better or faster. Yeah.
And another question for Emma. When is Angular TikTok coming, or has it already begun?
If anyone listening wants to make TikToks, go for it. But
I need like Angular TikTok run by Emma.
I did Angular House Party on TikTok, so it's a thing.
wait, you mean like the app House Party, or do you mean?
No, it's a trend on TikTok called House Party, and I did one called Angular House Party. So.
Oh, there's a new trend every minute. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the official answer is that Google doesn't support like official TikToks, but my TikTok, I don't know. Whenever I don't know.
I love it. Well, maybe that'll be like the next ngconf project. Maybe I'll be like, all right, this ngconf is going to be TikTok ngconf. Then are you ready? Ready? We're so excited. Yeah, definitely everyone. Don't forget that ngconf is coming up so soon, and Angular community is literally like family. I mean, anybody asks me what my favorite conference is, like it has to be ngconf. It's the best. So, and they treat speakers really well too. So love the snacks. They give us snacks and they give us sweaters because we're cold. So it's the best. It's the best. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining. Thank you so much to, Emma and Balash for co-hosting. Really appreciate you all taking the time. And thank you so much to all of our panelists for taking the time as well. Y'all just are such amazing community members. And, Angular is definitely my favorite community. I have to say it. And yes, NG Cruise, maybe sometime in the late future. It would be so good. Yeah. Definitely follow all these folks on Twitter too. They're all on Twitter. We posted about it on this.media, so you should find their links there. Everybody, again, is just so amazing. So, don't be scared. Like, just come hang out, chat, whatever. I remember my first ngconf, and it was just, like, so amazing. And that's, that's what the Angular community is. So definitely find folks on Twitter. And if you're learning, like, everybody's willing to help you. Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you all next time.